Why are 9 out of 10 men still battling anxiety, even after therapy, medication, and everything their doctor recommended? If you're nodding your head, you're not alone. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to the Hearts of Men. And I am your host, as I said, Dwayne Dwyer. And today we're exposing the hidden treatment mistakes that most people trap, that keeps most people trapped in endless struggles and cycles. Today we're diving deep into why everything you've been told about anxiety might be keeping you stuck in the same patterns. We live in the same reality, day after day. We'll explore anxiety not as your enemy, but as your teacher. And by the end of this episode, you'll never look at those anxious moments the same way again. What you'll discover tonight might completely shift how you approach anxiety. This isn't just another episode. This could be the breakthrough that finally sets you free. Now, as we get into these conversations, you guys know we like to baseline everything to make sure that everybody's on the same sheet of music because I don't like making assumptions. We don't like making assumptions. So we want to make sure that everybody's in the same space. So as we get started, I want to ask a very simple question. And that simple question is this. In your own words, I would like for each of you to describe anxiety. What is anxiety in your own words?
I want to start because I'm still in my answer, right? And I'm still in it from coach. And I'd always heard it, been through classes, resiliency training, all of these things. And there's always some long, drawn out definition, scientific terms, and all of these things. But I do believe that last week you said something as simple as anxiety, I'm paraphrasing, is the fear of what is going to come, like the fear of the future, something like that. So for me, that really set in to the point to where I can even remember it from last show. You know what I'm saying? So for me, that is as simple as I can get. And that was really simple and profound and the easiest basic way for me to understand it. So it took me to 50 years before I really got it. So that's my definition. There we go.
I'll go next. I'm going to simply say mental prison.
Now you're gonna have to say a
I'm
little
a,
more.
Yeah, I was about to ask.
I'm
I
gonna
was
fix the
waiting for it
coach
to
and
go
say,
like
say
a rain
more.
first.
Well, I'm going to go with the scripture says. It says, "Be anxious for nothing," right? So there's a reason why he's telling us to be anxious for nothing because our focus, right? If we're distracted, we're anxious about something that has not yet occurred, then it stagnates us. It has us locked up. We're in a stronghold. So it's a form of prison.
I like it. So for the record, on the hearts of men, that's the one day I get to be the one to go to go scripture. You know what I mean? I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. But all jokes aside, my focus was going to be more of a lack of spiritual discernment. Is how I would describe anxiety. Um, and going right there where Lisa was, when you understand that we were meant to be anxious for nothing, right? Um, it shows that we either can't see the Father's hand at work or we don't trust the Father's hand at work. Either one, but either way, there's a spiritual lack with anxiety. I'm not saying anxiety ain't a real thing. It definitely is a real thing, but and I suffered with it young, as a young kid, and the thing that eased it off of me was when I had to learn more. So, like, and I don't know if what I meant as a teenager is what Paul meant when he said, I learned to be content. But for me, I'm like, listen, I already ain't got nothing. What they gonna take? What can life take from me? So everything that added to my life from that point on, I was just content because I knew that the Father had His hands in it. You know, things that didn't come and things that did come, things I wanted to come that never showed up. I got, get frustrated in a moment, but I was able to sit back and not quit on my self growth. And by self growth, I mean on me. And spiritually, because anxiety keeps you in a space to where you don't where you don't trust the Most High. I don't know what He's going to do. I don't know what tomorrow look like. I don't know if I take this promotion, am I going to be able to do the job? Like all of these things stem from a fear that passes away when you know that he's in control. So.
I like all of those answers. Garfield, I like your answer because that's my answer, right? And I think all of you are in the exact same arena, and it's no different than what I'm seeing in the comment section. Miss Charlotte Jordan said, feeling lack of control. His divine appointment said, worrying about a future event that had not occurred. Robin likes Lisa's definition of mental prison. That's a great answer, Lisa. Be anxious for nothing. My grandson has it really bad. This is a great conversation for me to be hearing this evening. Thank you for sharing that. And then Miss Charlotte Jordan had some more. Fear of the unknown. And Miss Charlotte Jordan had been dropping nuggets over the past couple of weeks. So again, shout out to her. I'm agreeing with, like, my simple definition is me being hyper focused on a future unwanted event. And the key is that you're hyper focused, and that can be problematic. But I also think because we're in the space of, health and wellness, if you will, and I think we've been there now for about 15, 20 years, right? Because obviously they're market targeting, and the market is targeting the largest generation, and the largest generation is the boomers, right? That's why they're called boomers. And so a lot of them are older, so forth and so on. So it's all about pills, and pills and potions and things of that nature. And that's what they talk about. And so that said, when you look at anxiety overall, a lot of times what you're seeing and you're understanding is that the industry is what I'll call in a day. The industry is seeking to medicate as opposed to inform and teach and educate. And so in the space where you're seeking to medicate first, you're looking for, it's almost like you're feeding your own bias. So you're asking questions that usher people into the arena to agree with the thing that you want them to agree with. Therefore, now we can do the thing that we wanted to do, as opposed to educate. And I think that's what we are going to attempt to do tonight, because the American Psychological Association has a answer for anxiety. And I think sometimes we may be conflating things. And so according to the American Psychological Association, it defines anxiety as an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thought, and physical changes like increased blood pressure. But I do not want us to stop there, because it goes a little deeper. Anxiety is a natural and temporary reaction to stress or perceived threats. It often arises in response to specific situations, such as preparing for an exam, a job interview, or a significant life event. This type of anxiety can be helpful in motivating action or improving focus. Once the stressor is resolved, the feeling of anxiety typically subsides. So it's almost as though what it is saying, well, not almost, what it's saying is that anxiety is actually a good thing. It keeps you, it's almost like identifying that, going back to what Gaddy was saying as he explained, anxiety is almost like me not trusting in the Most High. It also, I think, to me, it also identifies that I'm not the Most High. So there, in that space, I think it's a good thing, because the other side of it is what we call anxiety disorder, which is a chronic mental health condition that involves persistent, excessive, and often irrational worry or fear that interferes with daily function. Those two are clearly not the same. And I think sometimes when we get into what I tend to call suggestive counseling, where I am going to suggest a diagnosis with you and to you, and then you to the point that you accept it as who you are, now you've given me permission to kind of like diagnose you. I've said a lot. I want to hit the pause button real quick and see what your guys' thoughts or feedback on anything I just said.
I think the biggest thing that stood out for me is what I just wrote in the in the chat, and that was natural and temporary. I think that, you know, as someone who works in education, and I see, you know, for 7 years I was the elementary and I've seen it, and then I see it at the high school, and I see parents and I hear teachers and staff and students, and I hear this word being used a lot: anxiety, anxiety. So and so has anxiety, so and so has a test and they have anxiety. Okay, that's fine. That is okay. Like, that's just part of growing up. You know, you're nervous about the test. Maybe you didn't study. Maybe you're just not good at test taking. Maybe mentally that's not the best space for you. Whatever it is, that's, you know, that's just life, you know. And I think, you know, I don't want to say that. Actually, let me back up. I think, like you said, those two things are really important. And I think that that's what more people need to understand, whether or not they're actually listening to this or just in general, is that anxiety is normal and it's temporary. Like, it's okay to feel a little something, that little whatever you feel before you take that test that you need to get your real estate license, or, you know, you about to hit that PR in the gym, like all of those little things, that's normal. You know what I mean? So I think I just, for me, I wanted to highlight the fact that, you know, those natural and temporary things is something that applies to all of us.
Yeah, and so that I was sitting here in thought as you were speaking on that one, because I never looked at, you know, what I used to just call just my nerves being the same as anxiety, right? Because I get it, you know, by definition, you know, because there are some physiological effects when you're in your nerves, right? Because your heart rate goes up, so it fits in definition. But I never thought of it in the sense of being anxiety. I just felt like your nerves is bad, you know, because you're about to step into something new, or you're about to go take an important test, and you want to make sure you retain the information, you know, and you know, those things tend to start like that last week of studying for exams. You cramming, not because you ain't read over the information, because you don't know what you don't remember. So I gotta make sure, and you're right, that is a space to make, because there's a difference between, I think those kind of nerves allow you to continue to be a steward of things, right? Those are that's the reminder. Hey, because sometimes my alarm goes off up here before it goes off on my phone. Like, hey, there's something to do, right? Hey, we gotta get, something's about to shake. Hey, half the time I got an alarm set to log on here to be in the back office, and half the time I'm already sitting in my chair when it go off, right? So those nerves, I do see what you. I do agree. Those nerves do remind us that we're not in total control, and then it also reminds us that, you know, how to maintain stewardship over whatever it is that we got going on. You know, so that's my only thought there. I just never really considered it as anxiety, but I like it.
I like the distinction in identifying between the two, as Yeti was unpacking, because it does make you think about how you are responding, and actually the benefit of having that temporary anxiety. So it helps you to identify, to not only not to trust in yourself, right, but to also, in the example of a test that you're taking, right, to prepare for a job or whatever that may be, it helps you to, you know, not to focus on yourself, but okay, you have to focus on yourself. So let me not say that. You have to focus on yourself, but it helps you to identify that I'm not doing this alone, right? I think that's what it is. And the other aspect where it's more clinical, I think it's important to make those distinctions because like they are inflated. We do use the term so loosely, like Garfield said. A lot of people say I'm anxious because of this, or I have anxiety, and they adopt that term anxiety and not understand what it's doing to them. So those are my thoughts.
I love it. I love it. And I don't want to give partial information for anxiety disorder to make anyone feel like I'm trying to usher them into what I'm thinking. So the rest of the anxiety disorder, like we read before, anxiety disorders are chronic mental health conditions that involve persistent, excessive, and often irrational worry or fear that interferes with daily functioning. Key features is anxiety disorders are marked by persistent and recurrent anxiety that is disproportionate to the situation. They prevent individuals from fully participating in life, affecting work, relationships, and overall well being. And anxiety disorder often includes physical symptoms such as rapid heartbeat, sweating, dizziness, or gastrointestinal issues. And people with anxiety disorders may avoid situations that that activates the trigger of their symptoms. And so I think it's important that we understand that. And again, first, as we continue this, I want everybody to understand that we are not licensed practitioners, and we do not, like, we're not responsible for issuing medication or things of that nature. So if you're listening to this and you think we're telling you to stop taking your medication right now, wrong. That's not what we're saying. We're saying understand the difference between anxiety disorder and anxiety. And if it were me and I'm seeing a professional, I am going to ask them questions because I think that's one of the most important things that you can do. Be educated about the thing that you're dealing with, and the proper person who can and should educate you is the person that you're going to see. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there before anybody takes something that we're saying and go make a irrational decision and say that, oh, well, Garfield said I don't have to take my medication anymore. No one here is saying that. Just want to make sure that that's clear. So want to greatly appreciate everything that you guys are saying. Thank you for what you're saying in the comment section. This is a team we didn't hear coming up, maybe because we didn't push through life. I'm gonna be.
Just in your turn.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, no, absolutely right. So this is a term we didn't hear coming up, maybe because maybe because we had to push through life no matter what. Absolutely. Absolutely. And let's just look at it from this perspective. The price of medication is not feasible for people who are in, and I'm just going to say what it is, people who are in low-income environments, right? If insurance didn't cover it, I'm out of luck. And got to realize insurance costs money. And oftentimes, we didn't necessarily have the insurance. No, you're fine. We didn't necessarily have the insurance to cover certain things. So we had to pick and choose the things that we went to the doctor for. So yes, thank you for saying that. Let's press forward because we got some things to cover here, and I think it's going to be good. First and foremost, I want to start off by saying anxiety isn't a disease. I believe it is your soul's GPS system recalibrating. Now, I know that may sound a little far-fetched, but let's just kind of roll with it for a second and see what happens. Anxiety is not a malfunction, it's a message. It often emerges when your current reality no longer aligns with your soul's evolution. Now, Garfield, you kind of made a comment in this, and you made a comment in the comment section, and you said, "What do we do with those thoughts? What decisions do we make after that?" Right? Well, I think you're spot. I think you're in the right direction. Anxiety isn't the dizziness of freedom, according to Soren Kierkegaard. About 31% of U.S. adults experience anxiety disorders in their lifetime. That's nearly 1 in 3 people. So that said, the questions that I have for you: if anxiety could speak, what would it tell us about the life we live versus the life we are called to live? I ask it again. If anxiety could speak, what would it tell us about the life we live versus the life we're called to live? I just want to say, Unc, that look is classic right now, bro.
I think
I'm tapped in, bro.
hey, I can. You look like it too. I can see it. So I think if anxiety can speak, it would be the conversation between your calling and your safety net, right? So I like you said, the life that you live in versus the life you're called to live. Because sometimes the life that I'm living is my safety net. Like you said before, I'm trying hard not to trigger that response that happens when I get anxious, I get nervous, right? It's the reason why people like me will never jump out of an airplane, right? Is because I don't want the problems. My heart rate gonna be beating out of my eardrums, right? I just can't do stuff like that. But if that was my calling, like me and anxiety would be having a long conversation. I'd be like, hey, bro, but I gotta do it. And anxiety be like, or we can go sit our butts down somewhere, you know. But then on the flip side, when we take that other approach, that temporary approach to it, anxiety is that thing that's saying, hey, this is our calling and this is what we're going to do. So if we just going to jump out here and do it, let's make sure our static line is hooked up. Let's make sure we remember to do the right things, you know. So, but it's going to be the thing that to keep you on your P's and Q's. It's going to tell you, hey, in order to walk in your calling, you have to make sure that you're in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing. When I used to when I had to prepare a sermon, nerves get bad. Like I said, it's just my nerves, right? But what was anxiety telling me in that moment? It was telling, all right, you have your notes, you know where you need to go. How about you make some highlights before you get up there, make your mark so you know your points that you want to hit. You want to make sure these are your non-skippables, all right? These are the things that kept me and all that the nerves helped me continue preparation up until the point I asked everyone to open their books, open their Bibles, right? So I think it's two different conversations.
I kind of like where he went with the two different conversations. How you ended with that, because that's kind of maybe sort of where I want to kind of pick up. So if anxiety could speak, what would it tell us about the life we live versus the life we're called to live? I think so. Here's how I look at it. I look at it like we said, anxiety is, the fear of what, could the future, what we think about the future and what may happen. So let's say, for instance, the anxiety is, how we feeling about um applying for a new job, taking this, I don't know why I'm on this thing, real estate license, I guess, because I heard it's really hard to do. Apply for school, whatever this thing is, right? I think anxiety, one of the things anxiety does, it asks us a question. And the question that it asks us is, in the sense, which path are you on? Are you on the path that is um that you want to be on, which is the one that talks about I'm nervous, I have the anxiety, I don't know if I'm going to pass this exam, or are you on the path of I'm not supposed to be having fear? You know what I'm saying? So which path are you on? And I think that's what anxiety does. It asks us the question, where are you at? Which path are you on? Do you align with this or do you align with that? So I think that's kind of where I want to pin that right there. I think I had a little bit more in my as I was thinking it out, but I think for right now, I think I'm okay with this, but I may circle back around to it and add more to it later.
I like everything that I heard, but it made me think about anxiety, and I think I want to answer this from this perspective, right? So the question was, can speak would okay, call me for your life. Okay, so I think it will say thank you for making the adjustments, because anxiety is something that I dealt with a lot. And it's actually my focus for we're doing a 21-day challenge, right, with each other. And anxiety is that was something that it was self-induced. And it was because it was something I didn't quite understand, yet I'm learning more and more. And I'm so thankful that I am. So I think it would say to me that stop living and reacting to these external demands. I think that's what it would say to me, because if you don't, um, you cannot realign. So I think that's what it would say to me.
I like all of that. And as I'm listening to it, it's see, questions like this really make you redefine your definition. And that's why I love it, right? And so it's not that my definition would change, it would kind of expand. And I think that's kind of like what, I'm hearing everybody say, because I view this question as kind of like layered. The first layer is me looking at the life that I'm living. Anxiety doesn't show up if I'm living in my comfort zone because I'm doing the thing that's comfortable for me. But once I step outside of that comfort zone, now anxiety shows up because now it's making me not only either redefine my identity or it refines my identity. One of those two things. Because it's making me look deeper and search deeper and all that other. Because if I don't do that, I am looking for external validation. I'm looking for people outside of me to validate me and so forth and so on. Now, when I am doing those things, I know that I'm going in the direction in which I am called to do. Now, anxiety shows up in a level of either taking responsibility for the things that I'm supposed to be responsible for or not. I am more anxious when I do not do the things that I'm responsible for doing. Why? Because now I know that in the back of my mind. Did I kind of devote the time, energy, and effort to prepare for, going back to Gad example, prepare for the sermon? No, I didn't. So now I'm anxious because, Lord, I need some help. I need you to show up, not just the way that you're going to show up anyway. I need you to show up to kind of, I know I did wrong. So now you back there praying and meditating all kind of other stuff before you go out to the sermon because you didn't properly prepare. So I think anxiety shows up when you don't do your part. Something I learned a long time ago when I was in the Army from, I think it was Russell Benton. Russell told me, he was like, my chief then. He told me, he said, look here, he said, the Army is easy. He said, control the controllables. I was like, what do you mean by that? He said, the things that you are expected to do those things and be good at doing those things. You're expected to be where you're supposed to be on time. You're expected to be in the proper uniform. And see, back then it was a different army. You had to actually polish boots. You had to actually polish boots. So make sure that your boots are shined. Make sure that your uniform is squared away. When it comes down to PT, make sure that you're where you're supposed to be. Make sure that you max out the PT test. Make sure that you qualify expert. If you do that, no one will reject buying what you're selling on the shelf. I was like, that actually made a lot of sense. And I'm telling you, just by following that simple rule for 24 years, it instilled the degree of confidence in me that even in those times where I had to go to promotion boards and things of that nature, I studied to make sure I did my part so that when I sat before this panel of people, and listened to questions that they asked me, I still felt confidence in there. So I believe that's how anxiety show up. It shows up to show me that I am doing the right thing by moving outside of my comfort zone, and it shows me whether or not I did not do the right thing by preparing for the thing that I'm supposed to do. Thoughts, concerns?
I think I like the way you brought it home because you showed, and you started off saying that this thing is layered. So you see with anxiety, like, and I'm hoping everybody's picking up on it. Like this, there's so many different ways that anxiety shows up. All right, so sometimes it shows up to show you that you're human. Sometimes it shows up like Coach said because you're unprepared, or you didn't do the proper preparation, and anxiety shows up. So sometimes it's a byproduct of what you've done, right? And that's why I likened it to early on to like that thing that keeps me a steward, all right? But I do like that. Like it just showed none of us said the same thing, but all of us layered this thing. So I appreciate it. I'm learning.
Me too. Um, I think it looked like everybody's good to go. Let's move on to the next question because it kind of goes a little deeper. So what if the intensity of anxiety is directly proportional to how far we've drifted from our authentic, predestined plan, a path? What would that mean for our next steps?
I think it would mean that it's not random. Anxiety isn't random. It's rational. Um, and then I think it would cause for a urgency to correct something immediately, to immediately correct it. So I think, okay, so let me read the question again. What is it? Intensity of anxiety directly proportional? Yeah. I think there's going to be a need for urgent course correction if this is the intensity of anxiety. If that's something that we're constantly dealing with, that it's going to require us to course correct. It's going to require us to this is a deep this is a long question. um I'm gonna stop right there. I'm gonna let somebody else add to it.
Look like Unc is on his notepad. You know.
Hey, when
I mean,
he put on the glasses, I knew I had to keep bringing it up and down.
I'm about to say, listen, ditto. But he deep in thought. So I'm like, I might as well just go ahead and try to freelance this thing, freestyle this thing. So what if the intensity of anxiety is directly proportional on how?
My bad.
No, you fine. Proportional to how far we've drifted from our authentic, predestined path. What would that mean for our next step? It means our next step needs to be extremely calculated, right? Meaning, because we're talking about authentic, I can't hear things like predestined path and not think of the architect of my life, the author and finisher of my faith. I can't speak for everybody, but I know I can speak for my brothers and sisters. But with that, I'm looking at it. When I say calculated, I'm looking at it as I really need to take a pause.
Yeah.
I really need to take a step back.
Correct.
Then I need to realign my everyday life back with the Father, right? Because we can travel on two parallel roads at the same time. That's our universal road, fear God and keep His commandments, and then that's our individual roads, which never separates us from one another, nor as long as we're all staying connected to Him. But I think when we in the conversation that we're talking about when I'm reading this question, it's like I'm going this path, and there's something in this path that either scares me, worries me, or I just didn't want to do. Because sometimes we just downright disobedient. It is just called a spade, and so I go right instead of staying straight. I go right, and now, in order for me to get back on course, I need to get back into fellowship, and that's staying on this road of obedience. And in that fellowship, then I'll find my way back into my predestined life, the things that He is aligning for me to do, the responsibility He's requiring for me to take, the things He's requiring for me to say and study, read, all of those things, not whichever, all of those things, so calculated.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that to what Gaddy was saying. before Uncle Junior jump in. um, the course correct, and I think Gaddy did mention that as well, and the realignment, right? So when you're thinking about drifting away from something, so that means you have to be intentional about correcting that behavior, or getting back lined up. Realigned is another word that Gaddy used. That is something that we have to be intentional about doing, right? And so for me, because of, like Gaddy said as well, that's why I had to jump in, because you guys are going to take all my answers. The architect of who we are, and the one who predestines us is God, right? And so for me to get back in line, or to get a realignment, is for me to make sure that I'm praying, make sure that I'm being still and I'm listening, and and be also as well, be courageous in some of the choices that I'm making, right? Because it took something to get me here out of alignment. So now I need to get back in alignment, and I need to be intentional about doing that. And so because I know who God created me to be, and that's, that's who I need to make sure that I'm lined up with. So I'll end there. Stop there.
What if the intensity of anxiety is directly proportional to how far we've drifted from our authentic predestined path? What would that mean for our next step? So, for what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of use an example of my predestined path, or someone's predestined path is to give back information, or to give back the knowledge that they've learned and accumulated over a certain amount of time. Let's say 30, 35 years or so. So now their predestined path is to give this information back, or whatever like this, or to help people, whatever, right? So I think when you're looking at the intensity part of this, is that when there's an opportunity for this person to go speak, or to go give a class, or to get up in front of somebody, and the anxiety is directly proportional, which meaning, where I guess my example is, they are not necessarily tapped into that part of it, as far as the portion giving back the information. They're not tapped into that part of their predestined path yet. They may know about it, they may have knowledge about it, but where they're at right now is, hey, there's an opportunity, bro, for you to go speak to these kids. And they're like, well, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. Well, hey, man, you went to the John Maxwell course, you got certified, but yeah, man, I don't know. Hey, man, there's an opportunity for you to do the right this. So in this example, like his or this person's predestined path is directly proportioned, because he has not tapped into that. And then at the same time, whenever a situation comes up for him or her to tap into it, there's so much anxiety there that they may not do those things. So what would that mean? What that would mean is they need to go in, dig deeper, and figure out why they have that anxiety to moving forward on that predestined path. If that predestined path for that person is to give back knowledge, give back information, then they need to figure out why they have so much anxiety when someone may say, hey, man, here's an opportunity for you to go speak. Here's an opportunity for you to give this class, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of where my mind thinks, and kind of where I'm at right now, is that what that means for the next steps is that you need to come up with some sort of plan or direction, and figure out why you have that anxiety. Then come up with some sort of plan to move forward, so you can get on or closer to your predestined path. That was my stab at it.
No, I love your stab at it, because your stab is exactly where I was going to start at. Because I think there's some people who believe they understand their predestined path, and I think there are people who are totally unaware of what their predestined path, and they're doing something. And I think for those people who are unaware of their predestined path, they're doing this and they're doing that, and they're trying this and they're trying that, and so forth and so on. And they're not necessarily achieving the degree of success that they believe that they should achieve. And so eventually they start experiencing anxiety, because it's almost like they're running around in circles chasing their tail. And so that anxiety is an anxiety of being unfulfilled. They're doing a thing, but it's almost like something is missing. It's like something in them is missing and it doesn't feel good. Like they're, I'm like, it's like the LL Cool J song, right? When I'm alone in my room, sometimes I stare at the wall. It's like that. Yeah. So that's a feeling of unfulfillment that creates anxiety within that person. That person needs to sit still and know that I am the Lord, right? They need to sit still and pray and meditate and listen. Quiet down the hustle and the bustle of everyday life, the busyness, which we always conflate and call it business. Sit still, be quiet, pray, meditate, and most importantly, listen. We'll pray and we meditate, but then we get up and go back to being busy. We don't sit still long enough to listen. Prayer is a conversation, right? It's not just I want, I want, I want, I want, I want. No, it should be a conversation. We feel that we should do all the talking, but yet the most profound words that you'll ever hear is the words from the Father. So sit still and listen. He already have a knowledge of what you want. He know how you feel right now because you're doing all of the things that you weren't created to do. So sit still and listen. For the person who believe they have an understanding of their predestined path, sometimes what we'll do is we'll add our own good ideas to the path. Oh, I want to do this right here. This would be great. I just want to add to this right here. And next thing you know, you're on the path and then you kind of veered off to the right. Right. It's like going down a dirt road and all over here, I'm from the country, y'all, so don't judge me. All on the side of the road is cornfields, right? So you veer off the road and you're just mowing down somebody's cornfield. Well, only thing you got to do, two things you do. The smart thing to do is to stop and retrace your steps and go back where you came from, because there's some ditches and all that other stuff. If you keep going, you can't see, right? Retrace your steps, get back on the path where you got off at, and then keep going forward. But some people like to, live life by the seat of their pants, and they just want to turn the wheel back to the left and then just keep mowing down more cornfields until they hit a clearing. I mean, to each his own. But you have to become intentional about getting on the path, because in that cornfield, you don't have the confidence of what is beyond that next row of corn that you're mowing down. So get back on the path, make a decision. Go ahead, Gaddy. I'm sorry.
How you know Gaddy had something to say?
Have I seen you?
Because man. So here's the intentional part, and what you just said. The intentional part is in the listening. Here's the danger, because even when Uncle was talking, I was thinking, do most people even understand what their predestined life is in order to walk in it? Because we're too, and even in our own head, and this can be real. Some of us don't know how to shut up in our own head. We may sit there and shut up and sit in quiet, but we're listening to ourselves conversate with ourselves in our head. And so we put ourselves right back on the path we were on before we sat down and pray in the first place. Because you thought you was, I'm telling you, we think we're listening to the Father, when in times we're listening to ourselves in our own head. When you make your petitions known unto him, you have to let it empty out of yourself to him. I don't think we understand how meditation works. There has to be an emptying process of your mind in order to hear him clearly. Because what anxiety is doing in your mind is so many conversations going on in your head, and you don't know which one you're supposed to listen to. And so we listen to the one we want to hear, that's going to put us right back where we want to be. Because the problem is not necessarily sometimes what your predestined life is. Sometimes the problem is what your self-willed life is. And we tend to think we're walking in our calling because we're walking in our excitement. This is what I wanted to do, this is how much money I wanted to make. So this had to be what he wanted me to do so I could make this kind of money. He ain't concerned with that. He's gonna give you provision wherever he called you to be. And that's the part that anxiety sometimes pulls. When anxiety works against us, it pulls us away from that understanding sometimes that he has provision for me where I'm supposed to go, but I'll stay right here because the money's fine. But
I think I appreciate that. I think the the predestined path. You know, Coach hit it. Roland popped up on. I mean, not Roland. Darn, did that again. I did that last week. I called him the other day. He didn't answer the phone, so I need to call him again. But Gaddy did it again, like the predestined path. I think that's really important, even to the question. Like, if you don't know if you're on your predestined path, you don't know how far off you drifted. You know what I'm saying? So, like, when you know you're on your path and you know what you're supposed to be doing, I think, and you have that trust, I think one of the things that come along with that is that you innately have less anxiety about things. That's just my extra 2 cents that I want to add into that piece of the conversation.
You have something to add, Lisa?
I really like where Gaddy went with it, because that's, was my thoughts. When we're not listening, taking the time to listen to the thoughts that we're having, and we're just going to choose the one that we just going to best fit the scenario that we want. And a lot of times that's something that we do. And I was thinking about predestined, right? That something came to me as I heard you guys talking. I thought that's God's business, right? He already knows our beginning, our in between, and our end, right? And a lot of times we try to project what we want there, which we already have discussed is anytime we're thinking that far ahead in our future, it equates to future focus to a certain extent, can equate to fear, because you don't know what's going to happen, but you're trying to figure it out. And our responsibility is to stay in step and trust and believe, because of who he said he was to us, and how we are in relationship with him. So I just wanted to add that.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So I'll sprinkle a little more seasoning in the gumbo, if you will. A lot of times that conversation exists because of anxiety, that continual talking in your head because of anxiety. You're not confident where you are. You're not confident where you're going. So you're constantly trying to talk yourself into rightness. It's like talking to a person, and you ask that person a question and they go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And they're like, man, I just asked you a simple question. But they're going on and on and on and on and on because they're trying to talk themselves into the right answer. And that's kind of like what's going on in your head. Like you're doing this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again because you're trying to talk yourself into a space where you feel confident. But then I'll go back to what you just said, Lisa, about the future focus and predestined and so forth and so on. And if I have that thought, not saying that what you're saying is wrong, but if I am future focused, is that not the definition of faith? Faith is the substance of things hoped for. So I must be future focused, but I still have to live in the present. And that's the disconnect. I think some of us are trying to be so spiritual, holy, whatever, to where we want to do the future focus thing, but we don't necessarily understand that future focus faith constitute a present ideology, a present being, a present state of mind, a present execution. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's the here and the now. So, sure, I can hope future wise, but there has to be something that proves today that my hope is in the future. That's the key. So I just wanted to add that to it. Again, not saying that what you were saying was wrong. I just wanted to add a different viewpoint to it because I believe that somebody was like, well, I should be future focused. Sure, but you must be in the present as well, living the future. And that's a whole nother conversation. I'm not finna get into all
I'm
that.
about to say, you got to turn the corner.
I'm not going to add to it, but I was going to, I think it's important to clear that up, right? So you should be future focused. But what I was referring to was that when you're so anxious about what's to come, and you're focusing on that, and your trust is not in God, that's where you go outside of what He is telling you to be hopeful about.
Right.
So that's what I wanted to add to it.
And that's why I said you wasn't wrong. That's why I was Great, yeah.
And I think there's a fine line, right? That somebody may be seeing in there, right? It's because yes, there's a hope for tomorrow, right? Now, if we be completely honest with scriptures, our hope for tomorrow should have some unified principles in it, because our hope is for what He's promised, right? But my faith is, and this is why it's important to know the testimonies of the saints from yesterday, because those testimonies he said every time he was telling them about trusting Him and keeping His law, He continues to say, remember, I am Yahweh thy God, who brought you out of Egypt.
Right. And
when he sent Moses back into Egypt, He says, tell them that the gods of their fathers you have to draw from yesterday to sustain today, and to keep that hope and that faith for the promises of tomorrow. So it all
agreed, spot on. Again, I'm not listen. All y'all are right. If I don't understand the Old Testament, the New Testament is just going to be entitlement to me. That's it. I'm sorry. I've been saying this for the longest. If I started reading the Bible at the Gospels and just go straight through from the Gospels all the way through the epistles, then I'm living a life of entitlement. I have to go back and understand who God the Father is first. Once I understand who God the Father is and understand His being, then when I get to the Gospels, I recognize who God the Son is, and the God the Son kept pointing back to God the Father. Then when I get to the epistles, now the epistles make sense because it helps me to understand that I can't get to the Father except I go through the Son. So that's why I say, if I don't understand who God the Father is, then I'm living a life of entitlement. So yes, what Gaddy said is absolutely right. And it is very easy to do if we shift our mind to actually desire to do it, right? That's why I say it's all about hope forward, but there has to be a manifestation of my hope today. And if there is no manifestation, which is the behavior that I have in the here and now, then I am literally walking through this life aimlessly without a compass or anything of this nature, hoping that I'm going to get to an end state, but I don't have a compass. So if I don't have a compass, a GPS, I'm sorry, Gad. I assumed everybody know what a compass is. If I don't have a compass or a GPS on my cell phone to give me directions, then how do I know that I'm going to get to a prescribed end? Well, the GPS and the compass is already given. Only thing we have to do is follow it. Y'all is too much. Y'all about to take us down the rabbit. We already went down the rabbit hole. I can't even see.
I'm about to say we in that rabbit hole.
Anxiety is fundamentally about projecting your consciousness into imaginary futures. The problem isn't your thoughts. It's where you're placing your awareness. Unease, anxiety, tension, stress, worry, all forms of fear are caused by too much future and not enough presence. Eckhart Tolle. Anxiety disorders are fundamentally future-oriented emotional states with heightened vigilance. So that said, in your opinion, what percentage of your mental energy do we spend in the present moment versus worrying about scenarios that may never unfold? Now, before you answer, I want you to think about today's society, the news, social media, all that other great stuff that we keep getting when you answer this question. So now, what percentage of our mental energy do we spend in the present moment versus worrying about future scenarios that may never unfold?
I'm gonna go before you and Gary. I'm gonna say 80 to 90. And I'm gonna say that because we are living in a society where it's microwave. Everything is, they want it done so fast, right? And so there's these anxious thoughts all the time. How am I going to do this? How am I going to, for me, I had to take a time to step back because it got a little overwhelming seeing all of the push to do this and do that and do this and do that. It was so much, right? So you're constantly focusing on this is what I have to do. And that's why I think it's so important for us to make sure that we take the time, because that can cause some anxiety, right? And so when you devote so much of your time to being future scenarios. I'm not going to say focus, scenarios, right? You're imagining what's going to happen, how is this going to play out, and then those things cause fear because you don't know, and you're trying to figure it out yourself, which is not your responsibility to do. Your responsibility is to stay in faith, right? So the scripture, take no thought for tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of the things of itself, right? It's you borrowing trouble you don't even have to borrow, because he already paid the debt. So why are we trying to borrow this trouble for the future, right? Because that's what we're doing, right? So because all that belongs to God. It's God. The future everything belongs to him. Time, he exists, permeates throughout time. So I think that is a part of what happens when we are investing so much emotions into everything that we're doing in today's society and social media. So I'll stop there.
Ooh, I like this question. I remember back in 1999, there was a lot of anxiety and worry because people thought that once the end of 1999 was over, and 2000 started, the clock was going to do this, the world was coming to an end. I've seen, people get worried over, Nostradamus predictions of, all of these different things. And one of the things I've noticed is that people worry a lot about a lot of stuff that is just basically out of their control. As I look across the internet sometimes and I'm scrolling through, this platform or that platform, and then I hear, politicians and people start talking about politics and stuff like this, and they're worried about this and then they're worried about that. And so for me, in my opinion, I think what percentage of our mental energy do we spend in the present moment, um in the present moment versus worrying about scenarios that may never unfold. I think that, you know, a lot of people spend a lot of time in this space, and the reason why I say that is that if you looking at the outcomes, if you was really, I'm not trying to be negative or to anybody or anything, but if you was that worried about X, Y, or Z, why you ain't saving no money for the future? Why you ain't, I don't know, building you a bunker if you think the world is coming to an end, or, why you ain't, whatever. Why are you not doing these things? You spending a lot of time worried about X, Y, and Z, but there's no action behind the anxiety or whatever it is that you're worrying about. So for me, I believe just what I look at sometimes, maybe it's I'm in a different space or whatever, but I think a lot of times people spend a lot of mental energy versus, you know, I think people spend a lot of time in mental energy worried about a bunch of stuff that they can't control in the future versus the amount of time they spend in the present moment. So I don't know. I guess if I'm gonna give a number, I want it to be higher that they spend worrying. So more than 50. I want to go. Let's try 80%. I'm gonna go with a high number. I'm gonna go 80%.
Well, you're close to Miss Charlotte Jordan. Miss Charlotte Jordan said 90. Go ahead, Gary.
90.
Yeah. Excuse me. I was gonna say, and I'm thinking of the way you phrase it, it would be 2080, right? And so I'm going to 80. I think Lisa said something about 85 and 90. I'm right there, because energy do we spend in the present moment versus worrying about scenarios that may never unfold. We live in a fear-centered society. Everything, everything. This is why we pay these high premiums on insurance. It's why we on all kind of insurance, right? Because we focus on what could happen. It's the fear. That was the concept of how they brought about the Social Security when it came around. Oh, because it ain't gonna be nothing for you to retire off of, and all these 401ks crashing and all this other stuff. So you're gonna pay into your own retirement. Now they're telling us ain't gonna be enough money for us to retire, right? But if I've been paying into it, why there ain't no money? This should be money for me. That's why I got a Social Security number, but my number on it. That's just my rant on off to the left. My bad. But it's just everything in our society is fear based. News is fear based, right? If you go back and you watch the movie Birth of a Nation, right, the original, the resurgence of the hypervigilance against when it came to racism during that time was built off of the fear that a free black man was going to do something to these women, right? It's fear. That's how they thrive. That's how they drive behavior. That's how they drive markets. It's all off of fear. Everything we do, all these investments and everything is about tomorrow. Nothing is about what. Think about it. Outside of the extremely rich people, the rest of us, we're spending all our good years working and saving and preparing for tomorrow to enjoy maybe 5 years of it. Because the goal ain't for you to live too much longer after you retire. That's not their goal. They don't want you to live another 60 off of their dime. They want you to retire and go on, what they say, and go on to glory. That's what they want you to do. And that's it. That's the reality. And so it's all fear-based, and they got you preparing for something that's never gonna come, that may never come, right? And we still living it. Oh, we're gonna go into this. Oh, this is gonna happen. Look what this politician is doing. They're gonna do this. They're gonna destroy this. And we live in these fear cycles, and we never get out of them. Every time one leave, another one come. And I don't want to keep veering off because it's something else that's going to probably lead us into future questions. I'm a hush.
No, you're good. You're good. I think, just to get after the question, for me, I'm at the 10-90 ratio. I think we spend about 10% in present day and 90% in future worry, simply because a lot of what you just said. But the issue is, I believe that anxiety dissolves in the light of present moment awareness. And I think sometimes we think we're in the present, but we're not necessarily aware in that present moment. It's like, let me check this box. I've done this thing, now it's on to the next. Well, at some point, I have to be present in this moment. One of the bits of advice I found myself giving here over the past couple of days is that remember the emotions that you're experiencing right now in this accomplishment. And then when you move on to the next accomplishment, carry that emotion with you so that when times get hard, those emotions can actually help you through those difficult times. And I think when we do not appreciate the current present moment, what we do is we allow those positive emotions that actually help us to understand the things that we can do, achieve goals, so forth and so on, have positive experience with people. We don't carry that forward. We leave it in the past and we move forward the same slate that went into that positive moment that we experienced. So it's like, yeah, the positive moment, we left it right down on the timeline, and then we moved the timeline and left the moment. And it's not so much as nostalgia, it's you carrying the capacity of the positive emotion that you had in that moment. Because when negativity hits, you got to have a reserve. And a lot of times we don't carry that reserve with us moving forward. So I greatly appreciate everybody's comments. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I got one. I want to pick with you. I want to pick on you. But I don't. But I do. because I want more. You know, you said 90-10. That's a lot of time. You know what I'm saying? And you said Miss Charlotte Jordan did the same thing. That's a lot. So at the same time, do you think that people can get to a point to where it's not like do you think 90-10 is more of an average? You think it's more or less? Because like I guess when I said pick on you, I look at your credentials, what I've known about you, the training, your experiences, a lot of different, check the boxes and a lot of, really you've had a lot of training. You soaked up a lot of knowledge. You look behind you and you read a lot of books too. So I
Mhm.
would think, the mindset coach. I wouldn't think that the mindset coach would be in the 90-10. And that's why don't necessarily want you to answer, but I don't necessarily want you to answer your specific number or ratio, but I would like to know, do you think that 90-10 is something that people can grow to where it can be a little bit more balanced so it's not so, you know what I mean? Or do you think that for a lot of people they're just kind of stuck there?
It depends on what they desire. I think it's
Mm.
available. I think it's possible. Now you're tapping into one of the reasons I kind of coined myself as the mindset coach because
Mhm.
I used to be 90-10. When you
Mhm.
look at what the average person does, it is either in preparation something to come or something they're trying to prepare for. Think about it. Like we heard a lot of comments just now, investing for the future, doing this and doing like all of that is like the mindset of what the average person does. You're looking at the stock market, you're paying attention to what the news is saying. Oh, you got this new pandemic that's about to happen. So, oh, we need to get stuff and prepare for that. Oh, the snowstorm is coming. Oh, we got to prepare for that. So when you look at those numbers actually make sense. I'm not saying that it is based upon any statistical study that I that I ran into, but I'm
Mhm.
saying that as I think about it, mostly everything a person does is based upon the future. The average person that goes to work, why they go to work on Monday? Because payday on Friday. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just calling a spade a spade. There are very few people in the workplace that actually love what they do. Most people go to work to get a paycheck. That's it. So if you ain't got that paycheck yet, you're doing it for the expectation of something in the future. Let me let some other people chime in. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add to that. When you wake up in the morning, the first thing you think about, I need to get my coffee. When you're preparing to drive the car, everything is focused on what you're getting ready to do. So I understand. I think I understood your question when you were like, "Can we make it more balanced? Can we be more in the present in those moments?" I believe that we can, like Coach was saying, but it takes a lot of intentionality. Like before you decide you're going to go to work, you're going to sit there for a moment, maybe have a brief conversation, with your mate. Be intentional about the moment that you're in, and not always so rushed and focus on what you have to do coming up. I think those are the moments you can get back and be present in the moments that you're in. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, if I can, I'm gonna say no, uh, because I no longer believe we're on borrowed time, right? I believe we're on God's time now, and this is just me. It would take me all night tonight, tomorrow night, up until probably March to explain all of what I understand of prophecy. Of where I believe we are. And so, with that said, it takes this fear and this anxiety that it's purposely orchestrated. All right, so let's say that, and in order for the majority to follow into the system that is to come, they have to be fear centric, right? But prophecy says that this will come to pass, that it will happen, that just we're going to see the beast system rise up, right? And if that is true, and I don't want to be that conspiracy theorist to send nobody down no rabbit holes, but if you read and you believe and you can see the times, right? The signs of the times that we're in, right? That's going to come for fear, and it's going to even be for people who claim to be the saints and the followers. They will be, that's going to be the testing. The testing is your faith in that you can only eat when big brother government tell you can eat, or are you going to go and move and believe that there's going to be some manna that's going to fall from heaven? Because wasn't that not the test for those who came before us, right? So that's the story of yesteryear that we have to remember, right? Because, and I'm not saying it's going to be manna going to fall from heaven. I'm not saying it ain't. I don't know what's going to happen. But what I know is that there's going to be a trying of those who say that they believe, by saying, hey, what if your resources are shut off if you don't do what they tell you to do? If you don't move into the new system, you can't buy or sell. But I say, king, ding, 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 ding. What do you say gonna happen when a beast introduces his system? Unless you take on that mark and that name, you can't buy or sell. So I go on the mark on the target, and I know I went left field with it, right? But I go on the target of saying, no, I don't think we can even it out. I think that we can get those who truly desire to live in faith over fear. I just saw Robin put that in there. Who desires to live in faith over fear? I think we can give tools to help call those people into a new mindset, into more of a faith-based mindset. But that's
Well, so that's so for that very same reason is why I say why I say yes, because it all goes back to what a person believes in. Everybody does not have the same belief system, and for me, I'm not trying to convince anybody to believe one thing or the other. Whatever you choose to believe, find comfort in that. So to your point, can the average person balance that out? Sure, by finding a way in this current point in time, in this moment right now, to be more appreciative than you are judgmental, to be more appreciative than you are gossiping, to be more to have a grateful attitude, gratitude, to show gratitude over complaining and all of those different things. For people who choose to complain, they choose to be anxious. For people who have a great attitude, those people are the people who find a way to balance it out. So that's why I say that even those people who want to be in that system, they find comfort in that system because in their mind, they have protection, they have provision, they have all those things in their mind. And if that's what they believe, that's what I want for you. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, I'm not trying to turn anyone away from it. But under the umbrella of belief, I believe everybody can actually find a way to balance the scales simply by having a better attitude. And that's what I'm saying. And again, it's not me saying that anything that Gaddy said is wrong. Absolutely not. Going off of what you just said, that is specifically based upon those people who believe and live by faith and those people who do not. But I think under the umbrella, everybody believes something, right? And so whatever it is you believe, be that unto you. That's my mindset moving forward. Did we answer your question? Okay, just want to make sure, man.
Yes, and I got a follow on, but that's for after the show.
All right, very well, very well.
Mainly for Gaddy.
Let's move on to anxiety reveals your resistance to your own power, right? That said, anxiety often intensifies when you're on the verge of a breakthrough. It's the friction between who you are and who you're becoming. One is a great deal less anxious if one feels perfectly free to be anxious. Alan Watts. That said, 23.4% of women versus 14.3% of men experience anxious disorders. That said, what dreams or goals do you believe the average person avoids because the thought of pursuing them creates anxiety? And I will start this one off.
Go ahead.
I will start this one off because it's exactly what we were just talking about. I believe the average person avoids taking the time to figure out what they're called to do simply because within them it creates a large amount of anxiety, it creates a huge amount of responsibility, and there's a level of fear that if they mess any of it up, they're going to get zapped with a bolt of lightning from heaven. I'm telling you, that's just my thoughts.
I got one. I got one is starting their own business or running your own business. Um, Speaking from personal, yeah, personal life, absolutely right there. Like when I started digging into all of that stuff, it is so much stuff. It's a lot of work that goes into running a business, especially if you planning on wanting to scale and then hire people. You know what I mean? If you want to hire somebody, something like you need to know about, maybe 401ks, you need to know about insurance, you need to know about days off. You need to like you got to learn all of this stuff. Like, so for me, the fact and the thought of every time I learned one thing, I had to learn, or every time I learned one thing, I learned five more things that I didn't know. So then now I go find information and learn these five things, and they all got five more things. So I just found it a whole bunch of information to go. So for me, I kind of tapped out and decided to go a different direction. But I think that right there, just starting a business is one of those things that, because of the anxiety that goes into it, a lot of people just end up avoiding it.
That was my answer. I was, well, because I have my own business, so I know the ins and outs and the um it's it's a lot. So I think that when you get started, you have these, anxieties about risk, the risk that you have to take, and you have to be vulnerable as well, because in this, you stepping out in faith, you have to trust God in it.
I have a different question for you since Garfield stole your question.
Okay.
If anxiety is our psyche's way of saying you're playing too small, what would it mean to honor that message instead of medicating it away?
Mm. If it said we're playing it said we're playing it too small.
Yeah, if anxiety in you is telling you that you're playing too small, what would it mean to honor that message instead of medicating it away?
Um, Trust God, because he's equipped us for this journey, right? I think that's my first thing that I would think of. Um, Playing it small. What would put it up again? I'm sorry, because that's a
Hold on. There you go.
small, to honor that message instead of medicating it away.
Instead of
Um,
instead of depending on the medication.
yeah. See, that's where I think it all goes back to, trust and believing. It has to go back to that, right? What do you believe in? What are you trusting in? And if that wavers, then this is where this anxiety comes in. This is where I'm not trusting. Well, maybe I'll go ahead and take this medicate for a little while. I'll take this drink right now because I'm stressed out. What I'm just saying. So, but if I'm doing that, then how can I have clarity of mind to hear what God is trying to say to me? Because I'm in this space of anxiety. I can't hear. And I'm blocking. That's the part we talked about when there's conversation where we have to listen. We have to be able to hear what God is saying to us. So for me, I think that only question would be, to just trust in God. He's equipped us for everything that we need. So now I got to go seek and find, okay, what is it that I need? So that I won't be anxious, and I can just trust and put everything on you. That's the place, that's the discovery I had to make for myself. So yeah.
Gary, which question you want? The first one or the second one?
I kind of want the second one. Because the first one, really, y'all really hit that first one. Because all I was going to do was echo, really, pretty much. But if anxiety is our psyche's way of saying you're playing too small, then what would it mean to honor that message instead of medicating it away? So since Lisa started on the faith thing, right? All right, where is your faith, right? The next step is step out on it.
Right.
And everything that I was anxious about that I've actually accomplished, it started with my first step. Every sermon that I was nervous about preaching, it started with my first word. And even if the anxiety or the nerves or whatever synonym we want to put in there, even if they don't fade away right away, the ball is rolling, and it's up to you to keep pushing or to quit. But there's just something inside, like it's something that makes me believe that if I keep going, it's going to begin to prosper. But I think also, and now this is where upbringing comes from, like depending on where you're from, and we talked about this a little bit, and it may sound like imposter syndrome, but depending on where you're from, that could be the fear alone. Like, what does success really look like? Right? Some people have what they call it. It's a remorse. What they
Regret.
Survivor's remorse.
Survivor's remorse.
Okay.
Right? You survived and you make it, and some people feel like I can't be black and be rich because I'm do I got to turn my back on my people, or do I got to? And it's so many things that just plays in the mind. So many scenarios. You got to block that out. You just got to block that out and just make that decision. I can't play it too small, because there's more in it for me. And that just might be true. I'd rather go down fighting, believing that there's more in there for me, than sitting there saying, what would have happened if I'd taken that step?
Yeah. I think I wish I could give Stephen Kyle a microphone right now, because I know I'm gonna mess this up. I'm gonna take a swag at it. I learned a lot by watching certain things, and one of the things that I've watched recently is a movie about a fire team in California. I think it's Only the Brave. I think that's the name of it. And the interesting thing is that you're taught a lot about how they fight fires. And what they do is obviously they cut lines. They try to remove the rubbish, the trees, and brush out the way so that the fire don't jump. But then they also create fires in there to kind of draw the fire along a different path away from the populated areas. Hopefully they get it earlier. I know Stephen Kyle is a firefighter. He could articulate it a whole lot better than I could. But I think a lot of times this is I think the thing that we don't talk about enough when it comes to anxiety is just like fighting fire with fire. The more we accept anxiety's presence, the less power it has over us. Now, I know that sounds a little difficult when people think about it, but it's like part of the struggle, I think, of that thing is that we're fighting against the presence of that thing, but recognize its presence and then now find direction in the presence of it. So you can actually, it's kind of like what I said maybe a couple of weeks ago. You can't beat a river into submission. You have to go with the current and use its power as your own. And I think a lot of times when we recognize what anxiety is actually trying to show us and actually trying to teach us about us in this present day world, in this present day life, then it's revealing some things to us about us as it pertains to the reality that we're currently experiencing. The more we fight it, the more it creates frustration, turmoil, and sometimes anger. So that's just kind of like my point to it. We are very close to the end, but there's one more thing. If you guys would be patient with us, one more question, one more point I want to bring out, because I do not want to talk about something as important as anxiety, and don't, because we're starting to get there, and I have to skip some things because I think it's important, but I do not want to not talk about this one. Anxiety as a doorway, the spiritual transformation you've been avoiding. See, your anxiety might be the most important spiritual teacher you'll ever find. Every moment of anxious energy is consciousness asking you to expand. According to Curtis Chang, anxiety is a doorway to spiritual transformation. That said, almost 32% of adolescents experience anxiety disorders. So, if we viewed future anxious moments as sacred invitations to grow rather than problem solve, what's our next best course of action? And please, for those of you in the comment section, I really want you to answer this. What's your next best course of action if we viewed future anxious moments as as a sacred invitation to grow rather than problem solve? The floor is yours.
I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'll start. Pause, pray, and then ask God, what are you inviting me to learn or to understand? Because if there's something that is going on that God wants us to understand in that moment, right? And like you were saying, we have to embrace discomfort. It's stretching us spiritually, right? It's stretching us out. And it's going to help us to trust in God more, right? So our next step is going to be either, we're going to surrender and allow and trust in God for what He is trying to help us to understand in that moment.
What is it? If we view future anxious moments as a sacred invitation to grow rather than a problem to solve, what's our best course of action? When I see sacred invitation, I can't help but to think about embracing that. When you think about something that's sacred, something maybe from your culture or something like that, it's almost like you want to embrace it. So I think the first thing we do with all of this is we embrace it. And then I think the next thing we do is tap in. And what I mean by tap in is a whole process, maybe of different things that you need to do, you know what I mean, to help deal with that or to the problem solve or the next course of action. So again, the first thing to do is just embrace it. Hey, there's some anxiousness right here. That's okay, brother. You fine? All right. So what does that anxiousness mean? So when you start tapping in to the anxiousness and what does that mean, and start asking questions about that scenario or whatever is going on, I think that's the best course of action. So again, my things are to embrace it, and then next is tap in.
Okay, I got a different question for you, sir. Check the private comments. I'm gonna set you up first. I think if we viewed future anxious moment as a sacred invitation to grow, one of the things that I need to understand is that what is in the future for me to do, the present person is not the person that's going to do it. I'll say this again. Whatever I'm supposed to be doing in the future, the present version of who I am is not the person to do it, which means now I do not have a choice but to grow. I'm solving the wrong problem. I am trying to solve the problem of what I see coming in the future. But the problem that I need to solve is the one that is preventing me to be the person to do the thing in the future. So now, if I don't focus on problem solving, I identify the problem. I focus on removing the blockage that's preventing me from growing. Then I can get to the point of becoming that person. Then when I look at that future problem, it may no longer be a problem. It may be just a benchmark. It may just be just a milestone that I need to understand. So always keep in mind, and I say this and I keep saying this, a lot of times we do things and we do it from the wrong lens. My future self is supposed to be the one that's giving my current self, my present self advice. If my future self is the one that's giving my present self advice, he is instructing me on what I need to do today in order to become who he is tomorrow. Now, that being said, Gaddy, you have the floor.
Man, this question. Exactly. That's my same reaction when I was reading it. What aspects of your current identity would you need to let go of to step through the doorway that your anxiety is showing you? Sometimes the answer to this question may be a complete makeover, a complete identity shift. Sometimes, depending on, because some of us been working on ourselves for a while. Some of us been dropping some things for a while. Now, Paul says, "For we are compassed about with such greater clouds of witnesses. Let us lay aside every weight and sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us." The hard part sometimes is knowing what to let go of. And here's why I say that. A lot of we had the same conversations here. You know, a lot of us have shifted our focus out of the brick and mortar that we call the church house, right, into our private study groups or public study groups, whatever have you. And the reason being because some churches, not speaking for all, some churches have taught us. And I'm not going to say have taught us, I'm going to use the different words, have pacified us in our sin, pacified us in our shortcomings, instead of challenging us to grow, to evolve, to put off those things. We begin to preach messages that made the sinners feel comfortable in sin. And so the reality is, I think when we get to this part of the spiritual journey, that anxiety is now beginning to show us a new way, is beginning to show up. I think that's the part of the walk to when you're actually starting. I can now say that I'm walking with Christ when he has given me his spirit. If I don't feel that conviction, I mean, you could say you got the spirit with you. I hear everybody says it. That's fine. But how do you know? Because I do not feel right going against the word. I don't feel. In fact, it starts with I now identify, and that's the first key that anxiety does. It first identifies where my shortcomings are. And when Coach Onk talked about embracing, hey, let's embrace letting go of some things.
Yeah.
Let's embrace laying down some things, right? And here's the thing: not everything that you need to lay down is sin, but it may be weight. Every weight and sin
So easily.
that does so easily beset us. Sometimes it you may not be able to go to the law and say it's a sin, but it's a weight that's holding you down. Embrace letting it go. Embrace walking, and I think that's when we'll see that freedom that we always talk about in Christ, is when we allow Christ and the Spirit to tear off that old man, let that old man be crucified. But I can keep dragging this on, and we already holding you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Very, very good. I love it. Listen, greatly appreciate you guys sticking with us. We got one more last thing because this is our bittersweet moment, and this takes us to our final thoughts. You're muted.
Thank you guys for this conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to continue to focus on this. But I think that if I can leave a thought with you, is that we can't figure it all out. It's not for us to figure it all out, and I think that's where we will allow anxiety to come in, not the anxiety that moves us forward, but the one that keeps us stagnant. So we can't figure it all out, and we don't have all the answers to all the questions. And because sometimes we think that we do, that's where we find that we are, anxious. And Word of God tells us to be anxious for nothing. And so that's something that we have to continue to work on. And so my final thought would be to you to just surrender, trust God. That's it. Just surrender and trust Him. That's it.
Good evening, and my final thought is this. So the conversation tonight was really good. I really enjoyed it. You're treating anxiety wrong. Here's why. The reason why I think a lot of people are treating anxiety wrong is because they haven't tapped in. They haven't embraced the anxiety, and I think that is just one of the reasons why. A lot of people, we all experience, as if you've watched the entire episode. If you haven't, I would encourage you to go back and watch it. But one of the things that we talked about early on in the show is that it was normal and that it was temporary. So if you're taking normal and temporary to the extreme, or you haven't embraced the fact that anxiety is normal and it's temporary, then I think what you're doing ultimately is that you could be missing out on some sort of opportunity. The opportunity sometimes is in the exact anxiety, because again, anxiety is about you know the fear of what is in the future. So if you can't tap into why you have fear of the future, I think it ultimately what you could be doing is you could be possibly missing out on your opportunity, or an opportunity for something better in your life. And that's my final thought.
Man, I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, Coach, for allowing me to be part of this one. You did your thing on this one. My final thought. While I was listening to my sister and my brother, I instantly began to think about Christ when he was holding Passover with the disciples. He spoke of the moments that were to come. He said, the one who dips his hand in the cup with me will betray me. Knowing that this man was going to betray them, he sat and supped with him. And we can always say he's Christ, I'm not Christ, blah blah blah. But if you remember the moments in the garden, his prayer showed the human form of anxiety. And what I loved about that, because it shows me that anxiety it's not the thing that's there to tear you down. It's just a recognition of your human form. And that's where Christ was at when he goes, if it be your will, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. And that's where we have to get into that space with anxiety. People like to point to the conversation he had with Peter. He said, Peter, when he's telling them about what's going to happen, he said, Peter, you have your sword on you? He said, I got two. He said, that'll be enough. And everybody like to hold on right there, right? But in that space of showing the human form of anxiety, by showing that anxiety, he was willing to allow anxiety to show his human form, obedience. And then he began to walk into the fullest form of his calling, which was to become the Passover lamb for whomsoever will, right? And that's the key. A lot of people we can't touch because we let anxiety shrink us instead of embracing what it's trying to teach us. All right. Instead of embracing where it's trying to take us. That anxiety, him stepping through from that moment onto what was to come, brought him to the highest point that all whosoever will can rejoice about. And that should be the same thing in our lives, that the body of Christ shall be able to rejoice because you are walking through the anxiety into what the Father is trying to show you, into everything that is kept from you by hiding behind the shadow of anxiety. So, I mean, that's really all I got. Let's just keep the faith. Let's stand strong. But I think we're stronger together, and we can lean on each other even in those moments.
Man, that was really good. I like that. That brother preached a whole sermon just now, and did not miss. I want to make sure I say that he did not miss. Neither did Sister Lisa, neither did Brother Garfield. I think it's important for us to understand that anxiety is not an enemy, even though over the years it has been, portrayed as one. It's more of a sign, or it's not a sign of weakness. I say it that way. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of failure. It's not a sign that you're broken. It's literally, I believe, your consciousness calling you to yourself. I think every racing heartbeat, every sleepless night, um, every moment of worry, I believe, is actually your deepest wisdom, your inner person, your inner man trying to get your attention. And I believe over the years, you have, the men and the women who learn to work with their anxiety, rather than I believe they became some of the most powerful and some of the most authentic and free versions of themselves. And I believe those are the people that we've seen a lot of times throughout history. They've learned to deal with what anxiety presented to them. They've learned to deal with, and on the other end of the spectrum, they've learned to work through their depression. They didn't allow their depression to grab a hold of them and keep them in bondage. Just like we shouldn't allow anxiety to grab a hold of us and keep us in bondage. I believe that every person that experienced anxiety, or those people who have been diagnosed with the anxiety disorder, I believe the future is still bright for you. You don't allow it to dictate your future. Allow the spirit of the Most High to dictate your future, and you stay on course. That I think it requires a level of courage. I think it requires a level of courage in order to push through it, not fight against it, but to work with the power of it. Because I think we've both experienced the power of depression and the power of anxiety. Don't fight it. You know, run with the flow, understand what it's trying to teach you, and then use its power for your good, right? I think that's how these things work. I think we get into the scriptures, we study, we meditate, we pray, we get ourselves around like-minded individuals who really care about us. And then to them in the moments that we don't feel our best, when we don't feel empowered, when we need somebody to uplift us, I think that's available. And when we do that, I think we bring this thing called community into full circle, because that's really one of the most powerful aspects of the community, to uplift each other, to edify each other, things of that nature. So I kind of want to land there, because I think that's really how it works. You're not put here, you heard it already tonight, you're not put here to do it alone. You're put here to work with your brothers and your sisters. There are moments I don't feel my best. I'll pick up the phone and call somebody. That's necessary. That's humbling as well. And I think it was necessary in those days I didn't feel my best, for me to recognize I don't feel my best and need to pick up the phone and call somebody. Why? Because it keeps me humble. So I just want to kind of put that out there. I greatly appreciate everybody. Love everything that you guys were saying on the panel and in the comment section. Greatly appreciate you guys. I want to show this before we leave, because that's the reason why we do the things that we do. That's the reason why the community exists, to have conversations like that, so we can help people even in the midst of conversations. So shout out to young Jalen, brother Jalen. You got this, man. I believe wholeheartedly you got this. And take every word to heart. Ask questions. Do research. I think you will find that this will be easier to deal with. So that said, listen, like I said, if you have not signed up for April 11th yet, scan the QR code over there, and that way you can register. Tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is our community meeting. So listen, all of you who can show up, we greatly appreciate you. Listen, we've taken up enough of your time tonight. You guys have a great rest of your evening, man, and just be awesome. Allow the best version of yourself to be a blessing to somebody else. And we'll see you guys next week, same time, here on the Hearts of